Hello, 8th graders. We are going to be starting Chapter 6 with Lesson 6-1A, Writing Fractions and Decimals as Percents. I just want to remind you that a percent is really a ratio over 100. So we really can think of it as a fraction with the denominator of 100. The first part of our lesson is going to be writing fractions as percents. One of the ways to do that is to use mental math. We can use mental math when the denominator is a factor of 100, such as a 5 or a 20 or a 10, a 50, a 25. What we do is we form the equivalent fraction over 100. Let's look at example A, 4 over 5. If I multiply both the denominator and the numerator by 20, I will form an equivalent fraction over 100. 80 over 100, which equals 80%. Now, mentally, I think to myself, what number times 5 gives me 100? Then I multiply the numerator by that number, and I get to my new numerator of 80. Let's look at B. I know that I want a fraction with a denominator of 100. Think, what times 10 gives me 100? Yes, it's 10. So I'm going to multiply the top number by 10 as well, and I get a numerator of 90, and that goes right to 90%. Now, here's the goal, though, is to go right from 9 over 10 to 90% with being able to do the 90 over 100 mentally. At this time, I would like for you to hit pause and do examples C, D, and E. You've had an opportunity to do them, so you can check your answers. 50%, 55%, and 44%. In C, we multiply by 50. In D, we multiply by 5. And in E, we multiply by 4. Sometimes, however, we don't have such nice fractions to work with, and they will ask us to use paper and pencil division. Remember that we are going to divide the numerator by the denominator. Now, if you'll notice, that means the numerator goes under the division bracket and the denominator goes outside the division bracket. You're going to work these out to 4 places, which is why I put a decimal point with 4 zeros after my 7. What I'm going to do when I'm done with my quotient is move that decimal point 2 places to the right and then round off as directed to the nearest tenth of a percent. When I'm dividing, I need to bring my decimal point straight up. 9 does not go into 7, so I shift over to the 70, and it goes in there 7 times. That's 63. Now, when I subtract, I'm going to get a 7, and I bring down the next 0. I'm right back where I started, at 70. So that means I know that all of these numbers up here are going to be 7s. Now, I need to shift that decimal point over 2 places to 77.77. And then I need to round off. 77.8%. Let's look at B. I'm going to divide 5 by 12. Bring my decimal point straight up. I get a 4. 4 times 12 is 48. Leaves me with 2. I bring down a 0. That's only going to go in there once. Multiply by 12. I'm going to get an 8. Bring down that 0. And at this point, I'm going to get 12 into 80 as 6 times. That's going to make 72. When I subtract, I get that 8. Bring down the 0. I'm at 80 again, so I know this is going to be 6 in the quotient. Shift my decimal point, 41.66. Now round it off, 41.7%. At this point, I would like for you to hit pause and do example C. All right, class, how did you do? This one's a little bit different because you really don't need that 4th 0. It happens to work out evenly in the 3 places, but you should have come up with 27.5%. The nicest thing is when they allow us to use a calculator. which they will do sometimes, and sometimes they'll have us do it paper pencil. So if we're going to take 7/12, we are going to take 7, hit the division key, put in 12, that's called an input. Then you have to find your second function key, which should be along your left-hand side of your calculator, and hit that. Then you look for your percent key, and then the equals key, and you should have 58.3%. Hit pause at this point, and you do B and C. Okay, class, how did you do on B and C? Did you get them right? Now, sometimes they will give us decimals, and they want us to write them as percents, and that's what we're going to do in part 3. What we do here is multiply by 100. Now, there's a shortcut to multiplying by 100 that simply says you move the decimal point 2 places to the right. If you want the percent, you move the decimal point right. Percent right. I keep that R sound in there. So let's look at our examples. We are going to take the decimal point, move it 2 places to the right. You'll notice that there's no digit there, so I'm going to have to put in a 0. So 0.6 equals 60%. In B, I'm going to move that decimal point 2 places to my right. 1, 2. It's 4%. In C, I'm going to move that decimal point 2 places to my right. 1, 2. There's no digit under here, so that's where I'm going to have to put a 0. So it's 260%. At this point, please hit pause and you do the last 3 examples. You can check your answers for D, E, and F. I hope you got them right. That concludes Lesson 61A, Scouting Out.